Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So this is the Convention episode of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. I'm your host, Darryl W. Perry. And, you know, it's kind of weird the way things sort of either work out or don't work out the way you had planned. So this morning, the initial plan was I would wake up about 7 o'clock, get to the hotel where Convention is happening by about 8 o'clock, have plenty of time to set up and get everything sorted before the first panel at 9 o'clock that I was hosting, the first ever political action panel. And, well, you know, I'm a heavy sleeper. And I wound up sleeping through the 6 o'clock alarm and through the 6:10 alarm and the 6:30 alarm and the 6:45 and the 7 and the 7:15 and all the other ones. I think I had like 7, 8, maybe 9 alarms set. I slept through all of them. I wake up and I sort of feel refreshed, and I look at the time because, you know, like sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night feeling kind of refreshed, look and see that it's 3:30. It's like, oh, wow, like, you know, like I still need to get some sleep. So this morning I woke up and I'm like, oh, I feel kind of refreshed. Look at the clock. Holy cow, it's 8:30. So I rushed. I was able to get to the hotel at 8:45, kind of got some stuff set up at the vendor table that I'm working before the panel began at 9 o'clock. The panel went very well, I think. And the video of that will wind up being up on YouTube in just a couple of weeks, probably a week or two. Generally, after all of the panels wind up getting recorded, Convention lasts through Sunday. So at the conclusion on Sunday, generally Ian will take a week or two before he starts getting videos up. They go up on YouTube, and then I will take those videos off of YouTube and put them on local community access television. And anybody can do this. Like, there are community access television channels all across the country, and generally they will take pretty much anything that gets submitted. Now, there are some community access television channels that will not take anything. They have very strict guidelines. It has to first be approved by the executive director, or it's got to meet some, you know, criteria, whatever, but they're not supposed to do it that way. But, you know, if you live in one of these areas where they'll accept anything, all you have to do is put a disclaimer at the beginning and at the end, and you can air it on your local community access television channel, and please do so. I encourage people to put content on local community access because it's a way to very easily get your ideas in front of a larger audience. So that's how the morning began. And, well, the initial plan for this show was to be recorded in front of a live studio audience. And, well, there kind of is an audience, but it's one guy sitting on his laptop, and I don't even know if he's paying any attention to me talking up here. So I will pretend that I do not have a studio audience during the show today. But I've got a very interesting story, and it's a story that I've had in my show prep folder for a couple of weeks now. It's about medicinal magic mushrooms. Now, I realize that me saying medicinal magic mushrooms is probably going to raise some red flags for people and think, oh, well, that's just some hippie stoner that wants to, you know, eat mushrooms and say, it's my medicine, dude. But apparently there are legitimate medicinal qualities in psilocybin. Psilocybin being the active ingredient of magic mushrooms. Yes, it is what causes people to have the hallucinations, but there are medicinal qualities. And, well, I've got an article here from a Dr. David E. Nichols, who is a co-founder of the Hefter Research Institute. Dr. Nichols begins Many people now have seen media stories about the renewed research interest in psychedelics as medicine, often referred to as a renaissance in psychedelic research over perhaps the past 5 years or so. Although many psychedelic substances have been used safely as medicines in indigenous cultures for millennia, we are now seeing renewed interest in these substances in Western culture. He says that as the co-founder of the Hefter Research Institute, he has watched with an increasing sense of both amazement and gratitude that, quote, we have been able to accomplish so much in such a relatively short time. We are on the path to make psilocybin into a prescription medicine. The Hefter Institute has been a key driver in this renaissance, utilizing most of the donations they receive directly to support clinical research. So what is some of the research that has been done by the Hefter Institute, and what illnesses and disorders have they been able to treat with psilocybin? And again, this is not just somebody saying, oh yeah, I've got like ADD and stuff, so I need to like do some mushrooms and that helps me focus, because then when I see a green dragon, like I always can focus on the green dragon. No, that is not what they're talking about here. So let me tell you about some of their research. The Hefter Institute provided major funding for a small study of psilocybin treatment for OCD, that's obsessive compulsive disorder. That study was done at the University of Arizona. The study provided mixed but encouraging results that have yet to be pursued due to funding limitations. He writes, that this being Dr. Nichols, writes, our first truly successful study was treatment of 12 terminal cancer patients who suffered from anxiety and depression. They were treated with a program of therapy that included psilocybin, the active component in so-called magic mushrooms. Participants showed a significant reduction in anxiety at 1 and 3 months after treatment, with no significant adverse effects. The study, led by Dr. Charles Grobe at the UCLA Harvard Medical Center, was published in 2011 in Archives of General Psychiatry, widely recognized as perhaps the top psychiatry journal in the world. Subsequently, 2 additional studies were begun using psilocybin to treat anxiety and depression in cancer patients, one at Johns Hopkins University, led by Dr. Roland Griffiths, and the other at New York University, directed by Dr. Stephen Ross. The patients in both of those subsequent studies have almost completed their treatment. Then the studies will start follow-ups and data analysis in their study. Preliminary analysis points again to significantly decreased anxiety and depression. In addition, the Hefter Institute recently sponsored a study of psilocybin-assisted therapy in a pilot study of 10 volunteers with alcohol dependence. The principal investigator for this study was Dr. Michael Bugaschutz at the University of New Mexico. Drinking decreased significantly beginning in the 2nd month of treatment after psilocybin was administered. So I'll tell you more about this and what needs to be done in order for you to be able to go to your doctor and get a prescription for medicinal magic mushrooms in just a moment.
Why do they hate us? Is libertarianism compatible with Islam? Davi Barker answers these questions and more in Voluntary Islam and Other Essays. He advances the voluntarist cause with analysis of the confluence of values between Islam and libertarianism, as well as contemporary movements from the Tea Party to the Arab Spring. Voluntary Islam by Davi Barker is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
So before I continue telling you about medicinal magic mushrooms and some of the ways that it might be able to help you, and there are some issues that I have that it could probably help me with. I don't know if it talks about chronic headaches in this article. I have read over it, but I've not read every single word coming into the show. But I have read other studies where people with chronic headaches have gotten relief using psilocybin. And, of course, cannabis helps with headaches. But the thing with cannabis, and from what I've read with the headaches, as far as psilocybin treatment, you're supposed to take it every time you get a headache. So for me, I've had a headache for 4 years. I don't know if taking psilocybin every day would be feasible as far as the treatment goes. Maybe, like small enough doses, I might be able to be functional, but I'll get into the article a little bit more and delve into it in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure that I tell you about Liberty.me. Liberty.me is kind of a social network, but it is so much more. Obviously, there's the social networking aspect where you can post statuses, you can share cat memes if you want, you can join groups, but there are also forums, there are chat rooms, there are free ebooks, there's free audio content that you can download, and that's not something that you're going to find on, say, Facebook. So Liberty.me, something else you will not find, or rather something you do find on Facebook but will not find on Liberty.me is internet trolls. And that's because internet trolls don't want to have to pay to be an internet troll. So yes, Liberty.me is a paid service, and you can get a discount on that service by using referral code FPP Radio at sign up at Liberty.me. Referral code FPP Radio. So jumping back now into the article from Reset.me, written by a doctor with the Hefter Institute, talking about medicinal psilocybin, medicinal magic mushrooms, if you will. He says there were strong correlations between the intensity of the experience in the first psilocybin session and clinical improvement following the session. Based on the positive findings from this pilot study, he says we are now implementing a larger randomized trial at the University of New Mexico and New York University. They're also supporting a pilot study by Dr. Matthew Johnson at Johns Hopkins, administering psilocybin within a 15-week smoking cessation treatment. Now, this is something that I've heard about, and I actually have a friend that, and yes, this actually is a friend. I'm not using the term friend to talk about myself here, but I have a friend who was smoking tobacco cigarettes, and he also was dealing with depression. He took some MDMA, and then he took some psilocybin, not at the same time, but, like separate instances within a matter of a couple of weeks. And he has since stopped smoking, and he says that he's no longer depressed. So, I know firsthand that it works. They're doing a 15-week treatment where participants, they had 15 healthy smokers. And yes, I realize that term sounds sort of contradictory. Healthy smoker, like how can you be a smoker and be healthy? Like smoking makes you not healthy, like it does stuff to your lungs. But I digress. They say they began with 15, quote, healthy smokers with a mean of 6 previous lifetime quit attempts who were smoking an average of 19 cigarettes per day for 31 years. 19 cigarettes is 1 cigarette shy of a full pack of cigarettes a day. That is a lot of cigarettes. Measures of smoking behavior showed that 12 of the 15 participants, 80%, were no longer smoking 6 months after treatment. The smoking cessation rate substantially exceeds rates commonly reported for other types of therapies, which are typically less than 35%. The article continues. He says these findings suggest that psilocybin may be useful and potentially efficacious, potentially efficacious adjunct to current smoking cessation treatment approaches, meaning that if you use psilocybin in addition to a traditional quit smoking program, that it will make it more successful. It will make it more successful. The results also illustrate a framework of research on the success and mechanisms of psychedelic facilitated addiction treatment. The question he gets asked all the time is how long before doctors will be able to prescribe this. And this is where he gets into what really interests me is the legal aspects, because you always hear people talk about how, the free market, blah, blah, blah. But we don't have a free market. We have a highly regulated market. But so let me explain how this highly regulated market that a lot of people think is the free market, that's why we need government, blah, blah, blah. Let me explain how this really works. So he says he gets asked all the time how long before doctors can prescribe this. The process to get there is both expensive and time-consuming. To get a drug to market, that is, to make it into a medicine, there are 3 clinical phases that must be completed. Phase 1 involves giving a new drug to humans to determine whether it can be tolerated, if it is safe, and what doses are acceptable. For psilocybin, there are extensive data with respect to dose and safety of psilocybin, particularly as it has been used in the form of psychedelic mushrooms since prehistoric times. Meaning, you can go back through all of recorded history, and then prior to that, and people were using magic mushrooms for medicinal purposes as far back as you can imagine, basically. Furthermore, none of the participants in our treatment studies has required medicinal or psychiatric intervention. After passing phase 1, so after proving this is safe for human consumption, and here's what dose people should take, you then get to move to phase 2. Phase 2 is administered to patients suffering from the medical condition one wishes to treat. He says, in our case, it is cancer patients who have severe anxiety and depression as a result of their cancer diagnosis, including those who are near the end of their life. Although phase 1 can be relatively small, phase 2 studies must be large enough to demonstrate a statistically significant improvement in the condition being treated. In this case, it is anxiety and depression. And large enough would mean that the test of 15 people who were trying to quit smoking, that is not a large study. That is definitely not large enough to get FDA approval. FDA would say you don't have anywhere near enough people in this study. No. Do it over and do it with 10 times the people or 100 times the people. You must have a large sample size. 15, not a large sample size. We don't care how much they weigh. Oh, but you said they're healthy smokers, so that must mean they're kind of skinny. Still, doesn't matter. Need a lot more people. So, what happens after phase 2? I'll tell you. Stay tuned.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of Fiend Phone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve Fiend Phone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
Fiend Phone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
What happens once you wind up completing Phase 1 and Phase 2 in your quest for FDA approval to be able to prescribe something, in this case, medicinal magic mushrooms? What happens after you show what size dose you need, that it is safe for humans, and you have done studies on a large enough group of people to demonstrate a statistically significant improvement in the condition being treated? Well, once Phase 2 studies have demonstrated that the medicine reduces the patient's symptoms, called efficacy, a Phase 3 trial must be completed. Phase 3 studies are much larger, but use the same medication and essentially the same treatment paradigm that was used in Phase 2. Also, Phase 3 studies are typically conducted at several different clinical sites to show that the improvement observed in the Phase 2 studies can be repeated by other clinical scientists. When the Phase 3 studies are completed, it is significant safety and efficacy can be shown. The FDA can then approve the medicine as safe and effective for the indicated condition. One important implication of such a finding by the FDA concerns drugs that are controlled substances. Psilocybin is a controlled substance and is placed in the most restrictive category of drugs, Schedule 1. The same schedule that one will find cannabis, but yet cannabis is approved in, I believe it's 23 states now for medicinal uses, which goes directly against the federal controlled substances list, where they say, no, things on Schedule 1 have absolutely zero medicinal purposes, medicinal qualities, and it is highly addictive. Well, no, cannabis is not addictive. Cannabis has a lot of medicinal qualities, and depending on how one ingests or partakes of the cannabis depends on, or rather determines how well the THC and the CPD wind up, or CPB wind up acting or interacting or affecting the symptoms. So, for instance, I talked a good bit about the chronic headaches that I have, where it's basically one headache that I've had for 4 years, almost 2 months. Let's see, today's the 30th, so yeah, 2 months, 3 days, and it'll be 3 hours in 5 more minutes. That's how long I've had a headache. Now, there are things that make that headache lessen to where, like I'm able to be a fully functional human being, to where I don't realize that I have a headache. One of those things is cannabis. And yes, it depends greatly how I partake of the cannabis, whether or not it will have any effect or any positive effect on me. If I attempt to smoke cannabis, it gives me more of an off-balance feeling, which is one of the things that I have pretty much all the time anyway. I have a headache and an off-balance feeling. Not quite enough to call it a dizziness, but it's an off-balance sort of thing. I have that all the time. If I smoke, the off-balance gets worse. If I ingest a tincture, then generally the condition improves. It also helps with my back pain and my knee pain. But I have to have a specific blend of cannabis. I have to have a 50-50 indica sativa blend. Now, there are other blends where it's 100% indica or 100% sativa or 80%. Those don't work as well on me. I need the 50-50 blend to wind up getting the medicinal benefits that I seek. Now, there are things where you can make butter with cannabis. It's called canna butter. You then cook with that as you would cook with regular butter. And depending on what strain people use to make the canna butter, it may or may not affect me the way I want it to. And I had somebody a couple of years ago say, yeah, I've got some medicinal brownies. Well, this guy thought medicinal brownie meant it gets you really, 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 really high. But no, that's not what medicinal means. Medicinal means it treats the symptoms and you're able to function like a normal human being. Not you take it and you're so high that you can't move. That is not what I need cannabis for. I have absolutely zero interest in getting high. I have interest in being able to function like a normal human being without any pain and without feeling off balance and without feeling like there's little men inside of my head banging on the inside of my head with pickaxes. So Schedule 1, let me jump back into the article here before the end of the show. Schedule 1 drugs can only be used in research. They cannot be prescribed as medicine, with the exception of the 23 states that have specifically authorized medicinal use of cannabis, but it's still illegal at the federal level. Drugs are placed into Schedule 1 if they meet 3 criteria, or if some bureaucrat claims that they meet the following 3 criteria: high potential for abuse, no recognized medical use, and no safety when used under medical supervision. All 3 of these criteria must be met when placing a drug into Schedule 1, or at least some bureaucrat must think that they meet all 3 of those criteria. To make psilocybin into a prescription drug, these factors must be addressed. The doctor writing this article says, first, the safety of psilocybin is being established not only by our studies, but also studies in Switzerland and the United Kingdoms. The key point that needs to be addressed, however, is the issue of psilocybin having a recognized medical use. If Phase 3 studies show efficacy in alleviating anxiety and depression in cancer patients, and the FDA recognizes that finding, we will have established a medical use for psilocybin. It then can no longer remain a Schedule 1 and will have to be placed into a lower schedule, such as Schedule 2 or 3. But I disagree. I don't think that it has to be anything, because there's a lot of research on cannabis having medicinal qualities. Cannabis being legalized in, again, it's something like 23 states that have legalized cannabis for medicinal purposes, but yet the federal government still keeps it on Schedule 1. Barack Obama could remove it from Schedule 1 at any point, but he will not do so. The head of the DEA could also remove it from Schedule 1. He will not do so. Congress could act, but they will not do so because it is in their interest to keep it illegal, because then they can wind up shutting down dispensaries. They can throw people in jail. They can steal product and money and cars and houses from people for violating a federal statute that is not against state statute. The article here continues. He says, although substances in Schedule 2 and 3 are still controlled, the rescheduling would allow psilocybin to be used by qualified physicians as a medical treatment for anxiety and depression. How long, then, before psilocybin can reach the status of being a recognized medical treatment? Well, he says that it might be as soon as 4 to 5 years, but it could be much longer, and it will be very costly, upwards of $8 million. And that, again, is probably on the low end. I'll post the link in the show notes. You can read the article at your leisure. And tune in again Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is Peace, Love, and Liberty.